Welcome to a brand new series. This is series 5 of the podcast and episode 1, and a real special for you today because my special guest is Bryan Adams, talking about his new album and some of the classics like Run to You, Summer of '69, his song with Tina Turner, and loads more. Bryan Adams, my special guest. Also try out a HYUNDAI TUCSON hybrid sports utility vehicle and see what that is like. In fact, let's find out right now on the Rock and Road podcast. Today I have a HYUNDAI TUCSON, spelt TUCSON, and it is the ultimate plug-in hybrid version that I have. Prices range from between $28,000 to $37,000, depending on the colour and spec and all the extras that you can get. Looking at it from the outside, it looks like a decent-looking sports utility vehicle, SUV. It has square wheel arches, slightly unusual. It has some lovely lighting. It's got a light bar across the back and also zigzag lights down the side. The front has got an enormous grille, a bit like a Mercedes EQC, but I do like those big chunky grilles at the front. And generally speaking, very nice looking from the outside. This particular one has 19-inch alloy wheels and the dark chrome effect radiator grille at the front. So it looks nice, but let's see what it's like on the inside. Well, the first impression is it has a really gorgeous dashboard which wraps right around you and highlighted by 2 silver lines of trim going all the way from the doors right round the front of the car and round the side door as well. But lovely silver lines going right round it. And the screen much more integrated than they were. A lot of them were quite high up, poking out from the dashboard. This one is blended in. Now, the advantage is that it looks gorgeous. The downside is that when you're driving, you do need to look at the sat-nav. You've got to put your eyes quite low down to see the sat-nav. And I'm in sat-nav mode, which is a decent sat-nav. It's all touchscreen, so that's definitely worth using. If you want to use your phone one, it does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. Now, everything is touchscreen buttons. There's no physical push in and out style buttons. However, at least there are buttons and it's not just a large screen and you've got to scroll through the screen to try and find what you want. And like a lot of HYUNDAIs, a fantastic centre console. So one of the main reasons I like HYUNDAIs is that there is a really lovely chunky centre console for your drinks, for buttons such as, well, obviously, drive, neutral and reverse and park. Things that make the car move and stop. And some other buttons as well for the heated seats, heated steering wheel. It's got its own designated button. Same with the parking camera as well. Just switching the car on now. Pressing the camera button. That's great. That is there, very easy to use. This is one of the main advantages to HYUNDAIs that I love. Also, another thing about HYUNDAIs is when you indicate left and right, the driver display also has a camera to tell you what is on your left and right. Brilliant inventions. Really, really useful. The sunroof on this is fantastic. One button and it opens a screen so we can have daylight but still be warm. Keep pressing that button and the roof comes up as well. That comes back to my head area, but the passengers in the back still get the daylight above their heads as well, which is nice. So really airy. Let's go and have a look at the boot. Right, this has got a 620 litre boot, less if you've got the hybrid to do with the battery pack. But it does have a great storage area either way. And yeah, lots of room. Now, there is a button here to put the seats down without having to then go round to the side door and put them down. Here it is. That is superb. Right, they're down at the touch of 2 buttons. All the rear seats are down and I haven't had to walk to the side doors to pull them down. Seat belts have gone with them though, and they're kind of like dangling in the way a little bit. So let's see what's gone wrong here. Okay, you would need to make sure the seat belts are tucked away first. The middle passenger seat, the seat belt comes from the ceiling, which is a little bit annoying because it's kind of in the way. If you were looking at one of these, it would be comparable to a VW Tiguan. And just seeing now what it drives like. Let's get it started. Pressing D and let's go. Lovely chunky steering wheel with extra bits. If you're on a motorway and you want to have your hands in different position, it's got these other bits lower down that you can just slot your hands in, which is quite nice. Oh, it pulls away beautifully. It's definitely got some power behind this one. By the time my sons learn to drive, they won't need to drive a manual car because all of these new hybrids and electric vehicles are automatic. driving over some road ramps here. Suspension is quite hard. Can really feel that. It says there are 379 miles in the tank, in the petrol tank. I have put it onto EV mode, and let's see if it uses any petrol, because I've had this trouble with hybrids before. You put them in EV mode, but it still uses the petrol. I want to know this. In a petrol crisis, could I still use this car, provided it's got enough electric power to do some short journeys in, or will it keep drawing on the petrol? Let's find out. So it's already gone down. It's on 378. I'm in EV mode and I've lost a mile in petrol. How? Okay, it's dropped down to 373 miles, even though I'm in EV mode. So it is using the petrol. Conclusion: hybrids are not really electric vehicles. They just save you a little bit on fuel, but not that much. Okay, picked up Dexter from school. Dexter, how are you finding this particular car?
There's curtains, you can open the top. Very good, and it's electric. Has very much, very nice. Yeah, there's leather seats.
Is it comfy?
Yeah, it's very comfy. Has heated seats, heated wheel. It's very good. That's the rest of me.
Thank you, Dexter. So, if you want to get one of these, have a look at the photographs and all the footage on the socials at Rock and Road. Oh, look. Dexter, you were right. There's speed cameras there. Oh, hi there, Brian. Shall I just get started?
Oh, with that voice, yeah.
Okay. Please welcome to the show, Bryan Adams. Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good. So you've got your 15th studio album coming out, So Happy It Hurts. How did this album come about?
Well, we were on tour just before the lockdown, and suddenly we were told there was no more concerts. And I kind of saw it coming because I was sort of following the news and everything. And when I finally got everybody together and we were corralled, what am I going to do now? So I just got all the receipts out of my pockets that had scribbles on them and started putting together song ideas. I had a young engineer working for me. He used to make the tea at my studio, and the two of us just day by day just started putting together tracks. And I couldn't get my band in the studio because nobody was allowed to leave the house.
Yeah.
So, piece by piece, I would sort of structure the songs myself.
Okay, so I can see that the album has been definitely inspired by that period in time that we all went through. The song's about freedom and optimism, helping each other, which really comes through in the album. And me being a rocker, I particularly like this song called Kick Ass. I see that John Cleese is at the start of that. How did that come about?
Well, we were having a lunch together, and I kept listening to him speak, and he's very funny. I was a big Monty Python fan anyway. And somewhere during the time I said to John, I said, would you like to come and do some narration on a song I'm doing? He went, of course. And so we got together a couple of days later, and he put down this great sermon, which I'd written the sermon ahead of time. So it was all sort of ready for him, and he took to it like a fish to water.
So he did this especially for this song. I mean, that's just brilliant.
Yeah.
I love that. Anybody listening needs to hear that song. It's called Kick Ass. Another one I want to mention, and I can't not mention this because we just had International Women's Day, but the song called I Ain't Worth Shit Without You. Tell us about that song.
Well, let's see. It was an idea that was sort of started by Jim Valance, my co-writer on the song. And what can I tell you about it? I mean, it's just...
Well, it says in the notes here that women rule the world, and that's not a bad thing. Is that true? Is that the sentiment of the song?
Pretty much, yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad we've all cleared that up.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the new album. So we're looking forward to hearing more of that. That's out now. So going back to 1980, what was it like starting out as you know, a new musician compared to, say, what it's like today? I mean, how on earth did you get noticed initially?
It wasn't easy. In fact, my by the time I got to my second album, I wanted to call the album Bryan Adams Hasn't Heard of You Either, because it got to the point where it was like, who? No. Who? No. And every time I was trying to get anywhere, it was always no. But I always took no as a yes, and just sort of soldiered through all of it. And just with a bit of determination and a bit of luck, managed to scrape my way onto some early tours, and I opened up for the Kinks when I was 21, and that sort of opened the door to another tour, and suddenly I became an act that you could sort of depend on as a good support, and would sort of get things going.
Yes, because you also toured with Foreigner as well. I mean, what was it like touring with these huge bands like Foreigner and the Kinks?
Oh, it was really good, and we went on to do things with Journey and all these different American bands that were really big at the time, and it was so helpful because it's hard to get your songs played on the radio. Even today, it's hard to get your songs played on the radio. So nothing's changed in that respect. In fact, maybe it's more difficult now than ever.
Yeah.
But I suppose the ambition really was just to be able to write some songs and be able to have some sort of gig. I didn't have a sort of end goal plan, or didn't have any aspirations for stardom. I really only just wanted to be a songwriter that could rock out, and along the way I sort of my voice got a bit better and better, and yeah, but getting back to your question, it was really tough in the beginning, and we at some point we were doing 3 gigs a day. We would be playing a noon-hour show at a high school. We'd be opening up for a band at 7:30 p.m. until sort of 8:15, and then at 10 o'clock we'd go off and do a club gig. And it was like that for a long time, and I think that sort of perseverance and, well, stupidity really, because we didn't really have much of a life. We were just gigging all the time. But when people ask me now about, what do you advise, young songwriters, I say try and get a gig, because that's where you learn to hone your craft. That's where you learn about what you want to do next, and that's how you get better as a singer or a guitarist. So I always think playing live is one of the best things you can do as a musician, and that's what we did.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. When I've gone to my head of music and I've said, can you play this new band? The first thing he says to me is, who are they touring with? Who are they supporting? Because that is so important to get noticed. So obviously it worked for you. And so you had this unique feature, as well as the good songwriting. You had an incredible voice, that kind of husky voice that everybody liked. When did you realize that you had this unique selling point?
I don't know if I ever realized that, but still getting away with it, really. I just thought, I remember sort of walking to school singing Stevie Wonder songs, because I was really into his album called Songs in the Key of Life, and I used to think that I still think Stevie is one of the best singers ever, and yeah, I was sort of singing to myself, and then I sort of started a band. There was about 5 of us, and we were all sitting in a room one time. We were going to record a song, and I remember the song. It was Blind Faith, Can't Find My Way Home, and which was originally sung by Stevie Winwood. And everyone looked around and said, "Who's going to sing this?" And no one put their hand up. I said, "Well, I'll have a go." And at the end of it, there was just this sort of quiet in the room. Nobody said anything. Everyone sort of looked at me. I said, "What?" And then no one said anything still. So I thought, oh, maybe it was really terrible. But listening back, I've got the tape still, and it was okay. And so I think from that point, I just became the singer in the band.
So you didn't have any lessons, it just literally happened quite naturally like that, almost by accident. That's an incredible story. I didn't realise that. Well, it just went from strength to strength, because all that extensive touring really paid off for you. You had your first top 100 single, Lonely Nights. What was it like achieving that?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of interesting, because I remember where it broke out of. It broke out of upstate New York, and there was one radio station and one DJ there that sort of championed the song, and that ended up sort of affecting another station, and then suddenly I had a rock hit, and it was on the rock charts, so I was exactly where I wanted to be, and just bubbling under. I wasn't getting up there, but I wasn't in the top 10 or anything, but at least it was on there, and it was something, and it made me feel like all the work that we'd done was starting to pay off, because people were paying attention to the songs, and that's all you ever want as a songwriter.
Yes. And then, of course, your next album, Cuts Like a Knife, 1983, a couple of songs that charted there as well, Straight from the Heart and This Time. But it was really Reckless that changed things for you. And you were only 25. I believe it came out on your 25th birthday. I mean, could you appreciate that intense sort of success at such a young age?
I think Cuts Like a Knife was the song that changed everything, because it really was a really good song live, and it basically put me on rock radio everywhere. So whatever I came up with next, if it was as good as that, was sort of guaranteed it was going to get played. And that's what happened. I came out with Run to You, and it was released just on my 25th birthday, and I didn't really know what was going to happen. Of course, you have no way of knowing if an album's going to be a big hit or not. But I had a feeling that I'd done something right, and I can only say that because I drove everybody mad when I made the record, and just worked really hard. I mean, for example, songs like Summer of '69, we recorded that twice in its entirety, and demoed it probably 2 or 3 times before we got the master that we have now. And that sort of devotion to getting a certain sound was something that I was quite particular about, and I still am, really.
Well, I mean, every single song was an absolute winner on the album Reckless, isn't it? 5 top 20 singles. What would you say is your favourite song off that album?
Well, I always liked Run to You, because it was sort of the mystery song that happened at the last minute on that record, and I'm not taking anything away from the rest of the songs, because they're obviously, I really love them, but there was something about the moment when we recorded that song, which was Claire Mountain, who was my co-producer on the record at the time. He said, "Listen, man, do you have any more songs?" And I said, "Well, I have this song, but I'm not sure about it, because it's got this strange background vocal part on it." And he said, "Well, just go out and teach the band it, and let's try it, because you need another song." and so I went out and taught the band the song, and we did a take of it. And when I turned around to look back into the studio, everyone was stood up. The engineer was stood up, assistant engineer was stood up, and they were just looking at me and said, like waving to come in and listen. And came in and listened, and that's the performance that you hear now on the record. It was a first take of the song.
The first take? That's the one we hear today?
Yeah. I mean, I end up fixing a couple of things, like there was a few flubs in the vocal, and we added some percussion in the middle, and we added a lead guitar in the center. But the performance itself of drums, bass, and rhythm guitar and vocal was pretty much what you hear on that record.
That is incredible. And you mentioned Summer of '69. I mean, the subject of that song, was that you just sort of reminiscing to those good times?
Yeah, of course. And it's reminiscing on every summer, not just. Well, actually, you know what? It's kind of bittersweet. It's looking back on the summer that you sort of figured out what love was about. So I think the idea, originally the song was going to be called "The Best Days of My Life," but then I sort of threw that title of Summer '69, and it's just sort of a laugh.
The other one I like on that album is Kids Wanna Rock, in the same way that I like your song Kick Ass. I think they've got that same kind of vibe.
Well, that's kind of Leona. Really. Again, that was really fun, and I wanted to sort of say that was a really fun song to put together, because I hired a drummer I'd seen in a nightclub to come down and try some songs. His name was Pat Stewart, and Pat's on tour with us now, if you can imagine that, 30, 40 years later. But he was playing in a ska band in a nightclub around the corner from where I was recording, and I just happened to walk in and hear him play, and I thought, wow, he's got such great energy. So I went up to him at the club and I said, "Hi, I'm Bryan. Would you come down to the studio tomorrow and just make some noise?" And he said, "Oh, I'd love to." So he came down and he recorded 3 songs on the record. He recorded "Kids Wanna Rock," your song. He recorded "Summer '69," and he recorded "One Night Love Affair."
Yeah, well, they're absolutely amazing songs. And the other one, "It's Only Love," how did that come about with Tina Turner?
That song sort of came together because her producer at the time was a guy called Carter. And Carter and I had worked together on another band previously when I was a young songwriter. And I'd written some songs for this band called Prism. And he called me and said, "Listen, I'm working with Tina Turner." And I was like, "Whoa, great." And this is before Tina had Private Dancer. And I'd gone to see Tina. I used to go to the gay clubs and see Tina play. And it was just, her with her dancers, and it was fantastic. And I actually met her backstage when I was about 22, and had written this song called "Lock Up Your Sons, 'Cause Tina's in Town," and she didn't like that song, but I didn't stop me. Carter called me. He said, "Hey, Bryan, I'm working with Tina. Do you have a song for her?" And I said, "Wow." I said, "I'm in the middle of making this album called Reckless, so I don't really have anything offhand because I'm kind of recording everything. But would Tina like to come and sing on one of my songs?" And I didn't hear back. And then, fast forward a couple months later, I heard that Tina was playing with Lionel Richie. She was the opening act for Lionel Richie. And I wrote a letter to her manager because there was no emails at the time, and I included a copy of "It's Only Love" that I'd cut, and I said, "Would Tina be interested in recording this?" And again, I didn't hear back until the day before they arrived in Vancouver, and they said, "Tina wants to meet you. Can you come back to the show?" I thought, sure. So I came back, and I remember being stood backstage in this sort of hallway full of people, and I saw this hair coming down the hallway. It was Tina, and she's like, I hear her saying, "Where is he? Where is he?" And someone said, "He's over there." And she came up to me and she said, "I love the song." I said, "Can you come and record tomorrow?" She said, "Yeah." And she came into the studio, and without saying too much about it, other than she was incredible, I remember when she left the studio, looking back into the room, because I was in the room with her when we recorded it, and I looked back into the control room, and I saw the engineer sort of stood there, and I went in and I said, "I hope you got that on tape." And they also looked at me and said, "Yeah, we got it." And it was almost like a tornado had come through the studio and just blown everything apart. And so one of the best moments for me ever recording, for sure.
It just sounds incredible, and thank goodness they had hit record. So in 1985, you were the first artist to open the American side of Live Aid. How did that feel?
Well, I get asked that question a lot, and I don't really remember much about it. All I kind of remember is Jack Nicholson introducing me, and then I was shoved on a tour bus off to the next gig, so I didn't really get to hang around.
Do you think you can't remember it because it was just sort of a bit mind-blowing in a way?
Truly, if there wasn't a video of it, I wouldn't have remembered any of it.
Wow. Well, then coming on to, if you don't mind, I'll just move up to the 90s now. And of course, I can't do this interview without mentioning Everything I Do It For You, which here in the UK spent 16 weeks at #1, the longest running chart topper in the history of the UK charts. Were you aware of how crazy it was over here? Because everybody was talking about this song at the time.
I mean, do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I remember it. Everybody was just talking about it non-stop.
Well, I wasn't here when it went on. I was on tour somewhere, and yeah, I mean, I got reports every week. So I mean, who would say no to that? I mean, I guess
it was in the news all the time, every week. Can he do another week? And all the other songs that were trying to get in the charts that couldn't get to #1 because of this one. I mean, it was a massive news story, and we still talk about it today, you know.
Well, I think there's something about that song that I think people that never buy records went out and bought that record. Do you know what I'm saying? I think it touched people in a way that, you know, certain songs just catch that sort of zeitgeist, and it just did. And at the time when we wrote it, I mean, I just thought it was a really sweet little song. I never thought much about it. And when it came out, it was only Mutt Lange, who was my co-writer on the song with Michael Kamen. Mutt was the one that said to me, he looked at me after we were done it, and he said, you know, Adams, he says, I think this is this song is quite universal. And he sort of foresaw it before, and he doesn't hand out compliments on music that easily. So when he said that, I was like, oh, I wonder if he knows something I don't.
Well, it definitely worked, didn't it?
I'll tell you a funny story about that song, which I haven't told before, which is when we were recording the song, at some point I came into the studio and I said, hey Mutt, I think the song is, we've cut it too slow. And he said, really? I said, yeah, stand up. And I sort of grabbed him and I said, play the song. Now I said, let's just pretend we're dancing to the song. And I said, don't you see? It's just a little bit too slow. He says, yeah, but we haven't got time to re-record it. And so what we did is we sped the tape up to the right speed, and then I re-sang it. But if anyone that's a musician out there will note that the song is in C sharp, but it was actually recorded in C, and so it's a strange key for the song. So I wonder if that sort of contributed to the fact that the song was different, you know, because it's in a strange key. It's in a key that no other song would ever be in. You'd never write a song in C sharp. So I just wonder whether that had something to do with it. But
yeah, the uniqueness of it there, something subliminal has affected us all, hasn't it? I'm not a musician, but it sounds like it's not something you would go out to do. But the way that it's happened accidentally like that has really made it quite unique.
Yeah.
Okay, because a few years later, coming up to more recent times, you got together with your longtime collaborator, Jim Vallance, again, and you've written the music for Pretty Woman, the musical.
Yes.
Did you enjoy working on a musical?
Yeah, really a lot, and it was quite different. I mean, I'd actually contacted Disney years and years ago, back in the noughties, about trying to do something with that film, because no one had ever made a musical of it, and I thought, God, it'd be such an interesting story to try and make a musical of. And they said, no, we're not doing that. And then one of my friends, he's a director of Beauty and the Beast, the Broadway version of the film. He said to me, listen, I think someone's making that. Can I put you in touch with them? And I said, yeah. And so that's how I got the gig. I went down and auditioned.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I sat down with Jim and I said, let's write a couple of songs so when we go in there, we have something to present. And so we wrote a couple of songs. We went in and we had these sort of ideas about what this could do, what that could do. Maybe this could be a part of this scene or that scene. And the director looked at me and said, okay, thank you very much. You two need to leave now, and so we can talk about you. And I think we were up somewhere up on the west side of New York City, and we walked all the way back down to Soho. And by the time we got back to Soho, my phone rang, and the producers phoned me and said, do you want the gig? I said, yeah.
I bet you did, especially as you were the one that first of all said, wouldn't this be great as a musical? So you must have been thrilled.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, pandemics aside, you tour a lot. I mean, I've read a statistic that you tour somewhere in the world 10 days every month. Is that right? And
yes.
Do you love touring?
That's what we used to do. I mean, up until the lockdown. So yeah, I do love touring. And as you probably know from this conversation, that's kind of what I do.
Okay, well, it's been fascinating to chat to you, to hear about the album and a little bit about the past as well. And we can't wait to see you live.
Thank you, Leona. I'm going to be finally doing my shows at the Albert Hall, which were booked. They've been postponed twice in the last 2 years. We're coming back to play on the 9th and 10th and 11th, 3 nights. We're doing a different album each night. And so if you get a chance to come down and check it out.
I would absolutely love to. Cannot wait. Thank you so much.
All the best.
Well, thank you for listening to the podcast this week, especially if you are a loyal and regular listener to the podcast. I'd love to hear from you, or maybe you're just trying it out because I had Bryan Adams this week. I've always got some exciting guests, so please do tune back in to the Rock and Road podcast. Coming soon, a Honda special. I've also got the Ducati Monster to try out. And if you like Jethro Tull, I'll be speaking to Ian Anderson from the band. Thank you for listening to the Rock and Roll Podcast.